we'll get into the main thing now. You're still waiting for your Hulai shirt or Mardini? I know the Hulai stuff. They probably sent it out by now. But I don't know about the Mardini stuff. Ooh. What's going on here? Just getting distracting myself. Udego, thank you for the 100 bits. Brother Joan is a big fan. Thank you for on his behalf. How do we download by hand? If you just click the link, like you should get a file. It's just a direct link to the FTP server or whatever. So in the Twitch chat, you should be able to just click on it and it should open. Or if it doesn't, you can just like highlight, copy and paste it to a new tab of your web browser of choice and grab it from there. Okay. Where did it go? Okay. So this is the main thing we're going to be looking at today. We'll get started with it now. So I cached out the simulation that we looked at last couple weeks ago. It does this compressed cache, which can be nice. Basically, it packs the points into little quadrants or like little tiles, which can be nice for like optimization. And it does some things with the volumes, like the surface VDB, to minimize data usage, which helps. So we look at this cache. It's like 5 gigabytes, which isn't too bad. I also turned off the velocity volume. That can save space a little bit as well. And if you are curious, like the settings aren't exactly the same as where we left off. I did go in a little bit and I was like tweaking. It's a very similar technique, but I did adjust like the animation a little bit and just a bit of these settings that we were like playing around with or whatever last time. So that's a little bit different if you're picking up like the file from a couple weeks ago. You a fan of the Rinse FM? Is caching the val field needed for meshing or just motion blur? I don't even think you need it for either of them. So this will still save the velocity attribute on the particles. The other thing I did was a quick hack. So like on the global flip solver, I changed the start frame here to like exactly the moment before the can collides with everything. So that saves just a little bit of time. But these fluid particles, these have velocities on them. So you don't even need them for motion blur. Hessel Audio? Yeah, there's a few artists that I'm kind of follow on there, and then there's Rinse France, like rinse.fr. They have some pretty wild, like more abstract mixes or music or whatever, but it's pretty cool. KPSB Hazri, how's it going? So when we read the compressed cache back in, this is bringing in everything. This just eliminates the velocity if it exists. In this case, it doesn't exist, and then this one deletes the surface field. Over here, I'm just keeping the surface, so we're just splitting them out. And then here, this is the points from the flip simulation. And if you want to actually see them, just unpack. So here it brings them in as like tiles or packed geometries. So if you want to actually like mesh them or do something like that, you can just unpack them. And then to start meshing them, I do this VDB from particles. Pretty straightforward node. The standard technique is they have the fluid particle fluid surface. You can do some nice things with this, but I'm kind of like building my own method out here because I want a ton of control over this. It's like a bit more like hero or like custom fluid simulation. So this is an alternative approach. So yeah, we convert these to a SDF or VDB surface, and then you can do like smoothing operations and things like that. Because the simulation is particle based, you'll always get like this kind of bumpy or blobby surface. There's like some custom masks that I made here to even improve stuff a little bit better. So before we get to that, because I did do the narrow band simulation, you can see that we just are doing a layer, like the top layer of particles. So if we want to get back to the whole tank, you can do this VDB combine, just a union operation. And if you connect the two, like the original surface volume with your meshed particles, then you'll get back to what the original tank looks like. And there's options to do this in the particle fluid surface. This is like the union compressed fluid surface checkbox, but it's just up to you. Like I wanted to build it out here. So now we're back to our full tank. And then what I was doing over here, we can do VDB analysis here to look at the curvature of the mesh or of the surface volume. So we'll do measure SDF curvature, and then with this volume wrangle, I'm just basically doing the absolute value of the curvature. So anything that's negative numbers become positive. And then smoothing that result. And then this last one, I'm just remapping or fitting the range. So remap curvature. If you want to visualize this, you can do like volume slice, or you can do make like a quick mesh of the volume and then transfer this result or this what this volume contains onto the mesh to visualize it. So if we just go a little bit further into the simulation, you can see here, this is giving me a black and white result here. So using the curvature, basically I'm using curvature to see anywhere that there's detail or lots of bending and interesting stuff happening. And then I can use that as a mask to more heavily blur the flat areas or the areas with less curvature. So take a look here, and then looking at the reference, you just resize some windows. So looking at the reference, of course, we want everything that's not like splashing to be very smooth. So we can selectively do that using the curvature. So you see what happens if I bypass and unbypass. We preserve a lot of this interesting detail, but we smooth out the rest of the surface or the rest of the mesh pretty nicely. So that's a little trick that's super custom. You can't do that in the particle fluid surface. So that's one of the reasons to kind of build this out a little bit more advanced or whatever than just using a single node. So let me bring this down a little bit more. And then another thing, so just say union with surface volume. So this gets us back to the full tank. And another thing that I was doing here is just making kind of like a big volume and then remapping it based off of the Y position or the height. So remap based on elevation. And then we need this data type, or we can't have it a standard Houdini volume. It needs to be VDB to work with the other VDB operations. So what I'm doing here is basically just by elevation or water level, we can selectively blur or smooth things that are underwater or close to it, to even more finely control, like selectively control where we're blurring or smoothing our surface. So if you really want to art direct things and get as close as you can to an image or to your reference, super useful to know these kind of more advanced like hacks or tricks or whatever. You'll never get like this result out of the box with a simulation, so you always have to do some voodoo after the fact. So let's take a look here. So just looking up here and then down there, you can get a nicer result or a little bit more control that way. The VDB voodoo. I might change this. Positive. Let me see if I go up to like, I'm trying to raise the upper limit a little bit, to try to even get some of the flatter, like the top of the fluid surface included in this like second smoothing operation as well. How to pull off the Terminator liquid metal. Should be pretty easy with even like metaballs or the flip simulation stuff. I'm not exactly sure, but there's some old, I think it was like a magazine that I even saw some of those like techniques. But I would recommend like Flip Solver to do even any like Terminator type effects. So yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit even of the top of the tank now, which is a little helpful too. So just doing another blurring operation. We want to basically preserve detail at the top of the splash to get this nice business. But then below water level or even at the tank level, blur that. So this is our like elevation based blur. Blurring by water level. There it is. Pretty cool. Okay, so this one here, this will go from SDF, or the surface VDB surface representation, to mesh conversion. And then would you lose details on the can going underwater? That's one of the things I'm like still on my list of stuff to fix, but you need to do like maybe some operations to fix or to like reproject some of this stuff at the very bottom of it, so that it's like clinging to the can better. Like when you render it, you definitely don't want any gaps or air pockets. You could even like delete the mesh, but yeah, that's one thing for sure that I haven't exactly figured out yet. But even with the flip simulation, like, because this is going to be represented by particles and then you're going to mesh them, there's always going to be some spacing that you're going to need to fix as a post process. So yeah, meshing this, and depending on your taste, you can do this adaptivity. This will, instead of like uniformly super dense or high resolution, you can do a little bit of this to just work more quickly. Super handy where it will preserve probably based off of curvature or something like that, like anywhere that interesting things are happening, it preserves the detail. But then with flat areas, it uses less polygons. And then I'm just converting here, getting rid of the poly soup into just standard polygons, because you need regular polygons if you're going to do these clipping operations. And then these are going to be for rendering. So to match this reference here, we want to cut away the surface so we're not like refracting. Like if we did it like this, it would look kind of funky. We basically want to pretend like this water is extending all the way to the camera lens. And then that's a pretty nice way to do that. So just for each side, you can do it. And then this last one here, it's hard to see, but this was for the floor. So we have like left, right, front, back, or front, back, left, right, bottom. And then these numbers, you can kind of find them by hand, or you can like look at your initial flip tank dimensions, or you can also, like if you just middle mouse button on a node, you get these coordinates of the bounding box, which is really nice as well. So you know where the center, like if I middle mouse button here, and we look at min and max for x, we know that max is 2.1, minimum is negative 3.6. So you can roughly use those numbers as your clipping numbers. And then one thing that I was doing over here, you don't have to do it, but can be nice. Take the particles, and then I'm making a group here. If I just grab that and put it into the selection, you can see it. These are basically particles that don't fall inside of the surface area. So sometimes you get some really small ones that like get blurred out of the output. They're too thin. They're not represented by the mesh or the surface. If you still want to keep them, you can check if they lie inside or outside of the volume like that. And then here I'm measuring the distance to see how far away they are from the surface. So like if they're more than 0.0025 units, then we'll keep them. And then you could go ahead and like mesh them or do whatever you want. So these are like the very fine droplets. So I kind of think of this as like an extra layer to keep anything that the more broad like meshing process might have smoothed out too much or blurred out. So it doesn't look super is like super subtle or whatever, but it's definitely a nice touch to get some like really small droplets or splashes. Like if you're just meshing stuff, everything's kind of like at the same scale or the same resolution or you know what I mean? Like all the features look the same. Doing this is just a nice touch to really get some small features or whatever. CG Rockstar, how's it going? So many custom things for details. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's all super like subtle things, but when you add enough of them together, that's like when you start to get more realistic or photographic or whatever. Yeah, you can bring this into ZBrush for sure and do some, like, if you give this to a sculptor or something like that, this is a really good starting point. And there's definitely some things you would want to add, like some little ripples or like capillary waves that go along the surface here. And just getting to this point would be super cool. The only issue with that is you do lose like the capability for motion. So getting as far as you can with simulation is great. There's ways to like blend or layer some ZBrush stuff on top. But for sure, that's, if you're trying to get to print quality, you probably need to go in and do some ZBrush sculpting or things like that. And then the last step here is just attribute transfer from the original particles. Getting the velocity information and then transferring or copying that over to the mesh. So we get that from motion blur. You probably don't want to do like 180 degree shutter with the 0.5 frame shutter time. You probably just want it to be a little, just very subtle, but it's a little bit of motion blur with CG render for sure is can help like smooth out some of the hard edges or whatever, all that stuff. It's possible if you're using like Python 3, if your Houdini build is using Python 3, I need to update those scripts to support Python 3. I haven't switched to Python 3 yet, so I still need to like test them or update them or whatever. You find adaptivity f's up motion blur. I'm just doing the velocity, like I'm transferring it as a post process. So it can, I think, if you lose like too much detail, if you're super close. But for this distance, I don't think it should be an issue. If that makes sense. And then you can cache it out at this point. I haven't done this yet, but I guess we could go ahead and do it now. Just get it going so we have our frames available to render if we want. You sometimes use like a shader SOP solver. You can, it's up to you. I'm working kind of out of the box or like quickly here. So let me start this before I... So I'll just start that going in the background. I'm using the reseeding here and kind of treating that like it's doing the sheeting or the SOP solver process, so it's adding particles where it thins out. You can see I have a little bit of like sheeting and breakup and stuff like that. Depending on your needs, you can push it and go further with that kind of stuff. But this is a technique that people have used before without that super custom stuff that can work out all right. So like this guy's done a good breakdown of it a while back, but basically he's using it for a viscous process. And just based off of reseeding settings, he's able to preserve some of these like bigger sheets without having them break up or anything like that. And then as well, if you look, I think is it Alejandro on OddForce or on Vimeo, he has tons of kind of good like sheeting and surface tension techniques and stuff like that. So it just depends. I think he's posted a few of them on OddForce. I don't know if the final like tools are available. If they were, I'd definitely be, even if it was like a Gumroad or Patreon, I'd definitely be interested in supporting him. But yeah, it depends. Like, if I would only use one or the other. So like you could either do the reseeding here. With narrowband, you kind of have to do reseeding this way. So that his tools might not support narrowband. And then over here with surface tension, if you're going to use someone else's like SOP solver technique, I would probably turn this off and probably not use like 2 surface tension or mix and match or whatever. But yeah, I'm just sticking kind of out of the box. If you don't need to go super custom, I think it's nice to work out of the box like that. That way, if people will pick up a file or you come back to a file like years later, it will still make somewhat sense to you. It will take a little bit of time to get back into the mindset of it, but if you're doing a ton of like SOP solvers and super custom stuff, it can be hard for anyone else to catch up on it. Reseeding does not work with retiming. It will definitely glitch a little bit. It will work. Depends how much you're pushing the retime. But basically, if you look at the solver, I didn't turn it on because I'm not doing like super aggressive retiming or anything. But you can add the ID attribute, and then the reseeder will respect that, or the new particles will get ID attributes. Yeah, so on the retime, you can either kill or freeze. Like, you don't want them to be set to freeze, because that can mess up some stuff. Like, they'll just sit there static for a little bit. So it would be unmatched points here. Delete. Or you could group them, do something you want with them. But basically, yes, so if they're being reseeded in or out of the simulation, this will just delete them after they're being retimed. So you'll still get smooth motion. Just make sure on the actual flip solver that you're storing and caching that ID attribute. But yeah, that was I think for a little bit the reseeding didn't do it, but since a few years ago it preserves the ID attributes pretty well, which is nice. Okay, let me see how many frames I have cached here. It's taking like 1 or 2 minutes per frame. We'll just get started where it is right here and start rendering and see how it goes. So I'll just turn the can off for now. I'm gonna turn the mesh on. We'll make a material network and make our redshift material. If you want to you could get started with the water shader. You can make it yourself if you want as well. I'm gonna get rid of this dispersion for the time being. One reason is I don't see any dispersion in the reference. Another reason is just because it can be like quite noisy as you're dialing things in. So usually I'll try to add it in at the last step if I want dispersion. But if you're like just setting up your lights with it on and everything, there can just be like too much stuff going on. It can be distracting. And then maybe starting with an environment light, or I'm sorry, we need to do the redshift light dome. And we'll see how far we can get with the HDRI. If you're doing water simulations and rendering them, here it is. To get some of these nice gradients, if you're not building out an entire like studio with like reflectors and many lights and stuff like that, it can be hard to get these nice shapes. So I'm just gonna start with a HDRI and see how far I get with it. So I have this. You can see there's some gradients or stuff happening. We'll see how it goes. All right, so assign our fluid shader. We want to stay organized or whatever, we could say that this is water. And I think we can start a render. Like 1 hour in, just getting to the render. All right, so it's looking okay. Hopefully this makes sense now why I was deleting the underwater stuff, whatever. This is basically you want to treat like using IOR. If this hits a back face, I think I can turn that back on. A back face, it will be treated like it's already underwater and it's going to air. If it hits a front face when you're doing like the ray tracing, this will be thinking like it's going from air into water. So if you just use the front and back faces of the mesh and the default IOR setting, you should be good. Yeah, I can do a file share. So yeah, the flip settings changed a little bit since the last a couple weeks ago, but these are the current settings for this file, and then of course for the meshing, they're starting to work okay. Let me straighten this out a little bit. Like I was saying, I need to still spend some more time on the bottom of the can to get it matching everything a little bit better, but for right now we can work on the lighting, and then I'm caching this stuff locally, so we have some frames cached. And we should, we can just let it keep caching and we'll get more of some frames to play around with. All right. So I don't know about this light here. Let's grab that frame real quick. Another thing that I do with meshed simulations with the normal node, the weighting method, usually I switch to face area, and then that can do a better job of giving you like nice smooth kind of like for water or for fluids it can work better. It's kind of hard to see, but some of this stuff here that's like angular or super hard edge, like if you just let it automatically calculate it, or if you're on a vertex angle, it can get a little bit too sharp. So if you switch to face area for the normals after you've done all your meshing stuff, you can get a little bit better of a like reflection. The normals are super important for reflections and refractions, even if it doesn't look like it's a dramatic change in the viewport, because you're bouncing around and everything so much inside of the surface. To get these shapes or whatever, it's pretty important. You can also do like very subtle attribute blurring of the point position. And like even this stuff visually, if I don't look at the wireframe or whatever, it looks very subtle. But again, this is something for reflective surfaces. It makes it a big difference as well. So let's make a snapshot of that and turn on the attribute blur, and we'll do another render. So you can see just how much those small things do to the like overall shape of everything. Again, visually it's not changing things too much, but then very dramatic in the final result. So be aware of them. They're there if you need them. You play around with the amounts. It's not something you need to use all the time or for every situation, but it's definitely nice to have or to know about. And then let's take a look at the light. You just rotate these in Y. These are great ways to try out different. You're just rotating the entire world or the dome that way. So you can sometimes find a nice angle of things to be looking at. Sometimes like out of the box, these are aligned for different software packages work on different axes or whatever, or you might have set up something to be on Z, the photographer might have worked on X. So even if you have like a backdrop or something, you might start off on the wrong angle. This kind of stuff looks cool. You'd flip yourself upside down with that. So yeah, I don't really use X or Z too much, but you can do flip your whole HDRI. You can flip yourself upside down if you want. So that's pretty cool. I might turn this one off for right now. Just make a copy of that there. And I'm gonna try out another one. For these, this style here, like there's no natural things showing up. That's why I'm staying away from like any of these outdoor ones. Like the skate park or things like that. It's gonna look a little bit different that way. And then I haven't color corrected any of these, so oof. I updated my redshift. I'm not sure how to switch the new color display stuff. So the outdoor yeah, I might need to yeah, I need to look that up, or let me just do this for right now. Just gonna save this, quit. I'm gonna go into my profile and I'm just gonna turn off the OCIO stuff. All right. So yeah, for right now, we'll just work without ASUS. For this, we really don't need it. There's not a lot of like saturation or colors or stuff happening. But yeah, generally with the HDRIs, I tried to stick to something like monochromatic if you're going for a studio kind of look and feel. Should this be? Should be off now, right? Should be disabled. And that's Houdini and all that stuff. Oh, it's embedded into the program. Let me just do a new tab. We can just keep working and ignore it for now, I think. Oh, okay, it's on by default in Houdini now. Yeah, I updated the Houdini version, so they might have changed the way that was working as well. Oh, it looks like I disabling that environment variable, it got me out of it this time. All right. Oops. So this is normal mode. We're back. Regular world. Let me see what's happening with Redshift. Yeah, it looks like I'm okay. But yeah, working this way, like, it's just never going to look that good with real world HDRIs. So try to stick to something that's like a HDRI studio. You can find them online if you search. There's some interesting ones. I think I have it's another one I like to try. That's this donut primary light. So this is like a lighting studio, and then this is like the donut style light or whatever. That's just a circular light. So you can give that one a try. Looks like this one I need to be a little bit higher intensity. So yeah, something like that even could be pretty clean, pretty interesting. See, I have some more frames of the mesh. It's been cooking in the background. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff I need to do post process or whatever to fix the can area of things. You can turn it on and just see what's happening with it. But yeah, these areas here are starting to look a little bit nicer, a little bit more natural. Let's take a look at. Let's go back to that other HDRI. I might rotate it. I think this is looking a little bit better, to me at least. But it just depends on the vibe, the style, and everything that you're going for. This angle, some of these angles here are kind of interesting. And we'll just talk about the lighting stuff a little bit more. If you want to get like super into it or whatever, you can just make some grids and then do like UV project just to get the UV attributes on there. You do initialize, click it, you should be good. We'll just call this like a light blocker. So these are just standard, or you could even call this like a reflection card. And if we grab it and kind of move it around however you want, usually just you can scale it up here. Let's just make it thin like that. And then if you look at this with the redshift shader, you can use some ramps and stuff like that on your grid to get some interesting lighting effects for sure. So you can make another RS material builder. And I usually just do ramp. And then this way, using the UV attributes, either horizontal or vertical, you can add gradients, or you can even do like, you can stack them to do like different directions or whatever. So plug this just maybe into diffuse. You can turn off reflections for this. We should be good. Let's assign this shader. We'll take a look. So you can see it's going from white to black down there. For your final render, if you want, under Redshift Object Visibility, just disable primary ray visibility. And it's still showing up in your reflections here. It's just not showing up to the camera, if that makes sense. So you can use these to add a little bit of extra like weight or motion or whatever, like kind of interest to your fluid. So if you're really trying to get a specific look and you want a ton of control over things, you can see here I'm getting like this kind of crunch stuff happening. And then just turn off primary ray. So it's still in there, still affecting a lot of stuff, and super controllable or super customizable. Yeah, and then the nice thing with Redshift is that it's so quick. Like, if you're trying to do this kind of stuff with Mantra, it wouldn't be fun. Or even Karma. It's unfortunately those renderers are just very slow to get an initial like feeling of reflections. So like working interactively and lighting things is just super frustrating using those renderers. It's definitely possible to get good results. I've done it, but if you don't have many resources like a big render farm, it just makes everything very slow process. So especially for streaming, doing stuff live like this, it's very difficult for me to try to do it with Karma. But yeah, the Karma GPU, hopefully that arrives soon. It works well. Doing water with like a GPU render is kind of a no-brainer. If you have access to a GPU renderer, just definitely use it for any kind of water rendering you're doing. So yeah, if we just we have everything turned off. I'll do a snapshot. We'll turn this back on, but we'll disable the primary ray visibility. So you can see just everything like that is blocked out now. What do you think they'll release Houdini 19? If I had to guess, I would say around October, but that's just going off of like their release cycle previously. Seems like every year or so they've been releasing around that time. What will be in it? I would guess like a lot of time being spent with KineFX to upgrade that. More integration with like crowds and lops and that kind of stuff. But it's hard for me to guess. It's becoming like, they just updated Pyro stuff pretty heavily. In the last release, I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of things there. I don't use lops too much. For small scenes like this, I don't know how much you need it. But it's, if you're working on bigger assets or with a bigger pipeline or studio, it's definitely like really useful. The Tops stream, I've kind of mixed mixed feelings about Tops or some of the new stuff, but yeah, it's super useful. So yeah, and then you can play with these ramps here. Like you can see I'm getting some really selective control over the look and the feeling of the splash. And it looks like this reference, there's like some blue. You could do this as like a post process, or you could do it in the image. It's up to you. If you're working with a HDRI, you can add the tint to it, just under temperature. Add some there. That's possible. This is like pretty subtle. And then under that like reflection card, if you want, you can add it some saturation or color information there. I don't know. It's up to you how much you want to do that. Usually in post is those like, it's easier to do those color moves than it is in the actual lights. So yeah, I don't know. That's my general approach for lighting these kind of shots. Um, Depending on your overall goals or art direction or reference, you can definitely copy and paste these, make more shaders and more ramps and stuff like that, and get really like technical and really crazy with them. It's up to you how much time you want to spend with all that stuff. Yeah, I do compositing, Ramafu. With this type of shot, I don't know how much compositing you need to do. Maybe in post, you could clean some stuff up. Like if you're working very advertising heavy, you probably want to make masks for the can and the label and separate out a lot of stuff to have control in post, and just treat that kind of like it's Photoshop, like work layer based. But in terms of actual compositing, like managing different layers and elements and combining stuff, I don't see too much of that happening with this shot. But yeah, this here is looking very nice. You think you can fix your mic? I don't know. I need to fix my fan or something. I tried to mess with the mic, but yeah, it's unfortunate. I can turn up my background music. Do you think that helps a little bit? Sorry if the fan is distracting. I think what's happening is it's writing out the service cache in the background still. So every frame, these like VDB operations are pretty heavy. I guess it's like already almost done. I can get rid of it. All right. There should be no more fans. No. So yeah, that's my general process for lighting and these kind of shots. The fans. Let's turn this one off. And you take a look at the can. I'm not super set up right now to I'm not super set up with the labels and everything, but we could take a look at the UVs and just see what we're dealing with. I think I have some. Let's just assign the shader. See what happens. So yeah, the UVs are laid out pretty well for adding a label to it. That should be pretty straightforward. I think it will be help as well. You see some nice reflection of the label at the top. And yeah, we have a couple different feelings here with the lighting. I think that this one here is starting to feel pretty clean, kind of very elegant in some places. For compositing stuff, you probably want to clean up some of these areas, or you can always, if you're just working on a still frame like this, you can go into your mesh area stuff and definitely like start to work this way to kind of like destructive or whatever. Andre, how's it going? You doing your effects jobs old school ways? Do you learn every new feature that might improve your workflow? It depends. I mean, like I'll definitely see what new tools or techniques are available and then kind of try them out and see how well they work. Deadlines are super super crucial. Sometimes it will, if you just have a week or like very limited time frame to work on something, then you unfortunately probably don't have a lot of time to like mess with new techniques. Or if you like knock it out first day, you get something you're really happy with, but you don't have a schedule to show the client until like 2 days from then you can kind of play around with new techniques or try some more unknown approaches and see how it goes and see if you get lucky or whatever. That's usually my process, is like first priority is getting something that looks good, and then after that experimenting and seeing if you can get something that looks even better. I mean, this time was the first time I used a narrowband for this kind of like small scale splash. I think it worked pretty well for the simulation and like optimization. So in terms of flip, that was definitely a new feature that I was trying this time. So I'm just making a box. I'm just going to use it to group and delete this area of the mesh. So like I was saying, if you get down to it and you're rendering and you just want to start working like somewhat destructively or lazily, sloppily, it's definitely an option to start doing these things. And then you can just use the group node and connect it to a box like that. It's pretty powerful. Just grabs them super quick, easy. Blast. Like that. Usually I'll do delete unused groups at the end, so you can see that's also cleaning up the group. If you don't do that, you have this empty group around. It's just a little bit cleaner to do it that way. So that's kind of cool. I don't think it's working that well. Let's try something. I was multitasking too much. All right, so we have these points like that. Let me see if this soft transform works. Group 1, scale, just scale Y to 0. Ooh. So you can do this soft radius. That might be kind of nice. So this soft transform is really useful for these kind of things. You just move the box over. This is kind of like the soft selection or whatever in Maya, or like if you do sculpting tools. It's just like a bigger selection radius almost. So I can just grab maybe the edge of that mesh. Ooh, look at that. And it does this based off of the surface, the topology distance. So I don't need to, it's not going to grab or blur or smooth that top of the splash. Look at that, pretty cool. We can probably do the same thing for the other side as well. We could probably do this all in one operation. All right, I think I need to set current operator, put it over there. And I think we can just merge. Boom, boom. got a little smiley face. So yeah, it's even getting that side of everything. So if we look through our camera, we can turn off the other objects or whatever. It's a lot cleaner, right? You could even consider doing it for the front and the back of everything as well. So yeah, that's a nice touch. We might want to get rid of this HDRI, get rid of it in the background, and then I'm going to make another kind of like reflection card, but this will just be the background card. You just have more control over what we see behind everything. So we'll take this, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees the other direction. So you see it. I don't want it to be that close. I'm going to move it back there. Alright. And then can make a special shader for this. Will be our background. And just assign it here. And we want to turn the visibility back on for it. So this one, instead of doing vertical, we can do maybe radial. Ooh. Circular? Yeah, that should be nice. So you don't want to flip that around. And now we have kind of a vignette style thing happening. I think right now this is set as a diffuse material. So it's like receiving lighting information or whatever. If you want to switch maybe to RS incandescent or like an emissive material, that's probably going to look a little bit cleaner. You don't have to worry about like lighting it evenly or anything like that. It will just automatically get like full intensity, or you can jack it up here to get higher intensity, that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's probably will get you a little bit cleaner looking stuff for sure. Gets us closer to the reference, at least. This, I guess, is just solid white. But it's up to you if you think you want a little bit of tinge or whatever. Just a little bit of interest or whatever on the sides. We might want to move our camera. Oof. We ran out of slide him over as well. We could try it without yeah, it's so this is just refracting that with no lights, but I think it looks better like this. This black area here is a little weird. That might be coming from, might be too much of a rotation maybe. So yeah, I don't know, just playing around with it. see what happens. Yeah. Let's get back to the camera. And just picking whatever frame of the splash looks best. I don't know if an earlier one. Could be cool. Let's look at this can shader. I'm just gonna switch this to a aluminum, just to get us a little bit closer to an actual product. An unlabeled can. So at least that gives us a little bit of the specularity or the response of the reflection or whatever is a little bit closer to things that way. But yeah, probably gonna start wrapping things up for today where we are here. Close up as many particles as ocean simulation. Yeah, it's this is already if we just look at the particle count for this frame from the let's get rid of the lighting. So this is already like 4.5 million particles. It's hard to even get more than that, but for meshing things and to preserve detail, you definitely need a ton of I don't know how well those points never show up that well on the stream with the compression or that stuff, but yeah, you definitely need high particle, high resolution like counts or whatever. It's starting to get a little bit of the kind of crown like sheeting stuff, you can tell. You know, it's like thicker ropes or whatever at the top. But yeah, it's super hard to mesh it and preserve that detail. And so many times with me, I do a flip simulation and like the particles, the velocity visualization looks super cool, and then you go to mesh it. It's just like blobby and flat and somewhat boring. So yeah, we're starting to do some super like lazy smoothing post simulation. Everything looks cool until you mesh it. It's kind of the same with smoke simulations, like in the viewport or doing OpenGL flipbooks. Smoke simulations always look super cool, and then as you start to like add a shader and light it, it will almost look worse sometimes. I don't know, it's just like the first iteration, it just never looks as good as you think it will. So I'm gonna try grouping the front and the back here, and this is probably the last thing I'll do for the stream today. Let's just like center that a little bit more. Just deliver flipbooks. Yeah, that's one of the nicer things if you're working with a bigger team or people who are like super talented with lighting or compositing, is that you can be a little bit you just have more time to dial in the simulation, get things looking like exactly how you want. How do you present iterations on meshes with gray flipbooks? It depends. I mean, I'll try to get as close as I can to what a render would look like. With this stuff here, with like the OpenGL shader, you can get stuff a little bit more like reflective or specular. Andre, thank you for the tier 1 subscription. 4 months. Let's go. I'll try to get stuff as close as I can to what it would look like. So I think if I go into my material network, like they have the liquid shader, like that stuff will actually should show. Okay, so just turn that on. I will just make it that blue color. You could turn off like diffuse maybe. Maybe this is broken. Let's just try this. Oof. So if you just do a classical shader, that's one way to do it. There's also with Redshift, there's this OGL material. That was probably, I should have done this instead, I think. Let's get back to this water. So yeah, with that, instead of just being gray shaded, I guess you don't have a ton of controls with this, but you can maybe change the reflection roughness or some stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you're dealing with a flipbook, obviously that's just like the best you can do. I don't know. I've never tried this before. Yeah, hopefully some of these techniques are useful for surfacing stuff. Depends on the shot and stuff like that. Sometimes what I've done is if you use the primitive, you can adjust the alpha. Take a look here. So you start to get some transparency. It doesn't refract or do anything like that. But if you have like if you have bubbles or stuff happening on the interior of your fluid, you could turn off. If you press the D key over the viewport, you might want to turn off the back faces if you're going to show this to a client or something like that. So sometimes if you just play around with the alpha channel like that, like then you can see the can inside, or you could get a better idea of what's going on. But in terms of visualizing the mesh, you can never like, you just have to kind of render it, I guess, to actually see, like, because so much stuff changes. Like I was showing at the start with the different, even just a small smoothing operation, and your reflections will look completely different. But yeah, hopefully these little tricks here, you might find them useful. The VDB smooth using a mask, like an alpha channel to selectively or like composite your blurring, is definitely useful for every like splash or every like flip simulation. I generally will use it. Let's just play around with this stuff. Yeah, it depends. I mean, even like if you're just rendering a single frame, you can soft transform a lot of that stuff and get if you're just looking for a specific composition, it's easy to get out of control with it or whatever. I'm just gonna turn it back down a little bit more. And then maybe this blur, let's just try it a bit lower. It's like maybe too much, stripping out like too much detail maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. It might just be that black part of my ramp is like too intense. It's just a too harsh of a black point or whatever. Not a super big fan of it in the render. Sometimes as well with these reflection cards, you might want to switch those to like incandescent or a constant shader as well. Just so you don't have to worry too much about like how the light is hitting stuff. Like you don't want to worry about lighting your, it just gets to a mess that way. So it's just up to you to spend a lot of time playing around with these ramps. You can see I'm bringing in some shape, some shading and stuff that way. On SOP level, turn on tessellation. You can do it. It's up to you, but that might can look cool or whatever. But yeah, if you do tessellation here, like subdivision for the result, sometimes that can give you a lot better reflections. Oops. So yeah, render time like subdivision, that's what you mean with the tessellation? If you're gonna do that, you might not want to use adaptivity or too much adaptivity, because that can sometimes cause issues with like the tessellation or whatever. That might just be I need like higher quality. So yeah, you could get some smoother results that way as well. And I was trying, I don't know how well it was working. I was trying to send some of these values up higher to like 2 or whatever. Just trying to get more kind of dynamic range, like HDR type feel. If you just stay between 0 and 1, your reflections might look flat. But if you boost some of these up to like bigger numbers, you'll start to get like just more highlights, or it's kind of more like you're using an HDR as a reflector, if that makes sense, instead of like staying between 0 and 1 or whatever. All right, we'll go up to like 4K, something like that. We'll turn on a bucket style render. So yeah, even this stuff is like, you're not really dealing with specular roughness, and as long as you have that, what was it called? Dispersion. As long as you have that turned off, it should be super quick to render. Let's go. So yeah, probably gonna be it for today here.